Now, a few minutes ago, Pete Hegseth's mother appeared on Fox News to talk about the email that she sent her son back in 2018, repeatedly accusing him of abusing women, which the New York Times published last week. Here's some of what she said this morning on Fox News.
They were going through, Pete and his wife at the time were going through a very difficult divorce. It was a very emotional time, and I'm sure many of you across the country understand how difficult divorce is on a family. There's emotions. We say things, and I wrote that in haste. I wrote that with deep emotions. I wrote that as a parent, and about 2 hours later, my husband tells me I should think through things a little bit more, but Pete and I are both very passionate people. I wrote that out of love. And about 2 hours later, I retracted it with an apology email, but nobody's seen that. Pete and I are very close today. In fact, our whole family is very tight-knit. But I think that we as parents, we always parent.
No, I get it.
I mean, and that was 7 years ago.
There are allegations of sexual assault, excessive alcohol use, infidelity, financial mismanagement. As a parent, that's really hard to, it's hard to hear.
Right. Well, our job as parents are to correct. They are to speak truth. And I am a passionate person like Pete, and sometimes emotional words come out. I don't believe any of that is true, any of it. And I'm here. I wouldn't be sitting in this chair today if I didn't believe that about my son.
Well, so much to talk about here. First of all, a mother who loves her son, a mother who wants to speak truth to her son, as she said, when she saw some things that she disagreed with. I will say a few things here, though. First of all, she attacked the New York Times and said, well, nobody's seen that apology. The New York Times asked her when she said there was an apology email to send them that, and they would print it. And she could have shown that apology email on Fox News. She did not. She also, when she was asked how the New York Times got this, because she was attacking the New York Times, she also didn't come straightforward on that when the New York Times suggested that she had forwarded it to a third party who then obviously released it. I would say also a couple of other things. I talked to somebody very close to those making deliberations with the senators on Pete Hegseth, and they said there are just too many problems. She talked about Claire McCaskill. Let me take you through a timeline of this, because you've worked on timelines, when you were an attorney. The problem with the letter, where she repeatedly calls Pete Hegseth an abuser of women, is that it lines up with the rape allegations from California. It lines up with the charges, the whistleblower charges from when he worked for the two veterans organizations. The alcoholism, or the problems with alcohol, lines up with his own Fox News employees not only telling colleagues, are not only telling NBC's Courtney Kuby these stories. Also, people in the Trump transition over the past week or two have been hearing these stories from Fox News. We have heard it from friends that we know over at Fox News. So I understand a mother trying to do what a mother would try to do. But
this is a really important job.
This changes very little, and it changes very little because it's what I said about Matt Gaetz, the old Midas commercial. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later. Like, Pete Hegseth can step down now, or he can go to hearings where, as Steve Doocy asked, well, what do you say about those other people who are going to come and actually talk about these charges in this letter, and basically going to confirm all of the things that you said? She said, well, I can't control that, but the Senate can, and those claims, all the lurid details, are going to be aired out in the Senate And that ends up being bad for Pete Hegseth in the long run. It ends up being bad for the Trump administration and just more distractions. This is Matt Gaetz all over again, whether Republican senators personally like him and whether Fox News colleagues personally like him or not.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that somebody would be nominated for Secretary of Defense that has all of this in his background. And listen, I have people I love very much that have struggled with alcohol. My mother struggled with alcohol. I got to say this, that there are two issues here. One is clearly this man has a problem with alcohol. You don't go out with your coworkers or your team that you lead and try to drunkenly get on the stage with strippers. You do not have to be carried to your room by coworkers. You do not urinate in front of a hotel. You do not pass out in the van with your coworkers or the people that work for you. This was a man who was in leadership positions who clearly was abusing alcohol. And what really troubles me about this, Joe, is not that he might have an alcohol problem, but he's not even acknowledged it. There are literally hundreds and thousands of people across America today that are waking up trying to stay sober today, trying to work very hard to maintain their sobriety, who have acknowledged problems with alcohol. This man has not so much even acknowledged that he has any problem. And we have coworkers at Fox saying he was showing up smelling of alcohol for work very recently. I mean, within the last year or two, they're telling NBC. So this is really a problem if you're going to lead be the Secretary of Defense. Many of the things he has done are violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, including adultery, I might add.
So, Mara, there is we have reported on the show that some of these allegations came as a real surprise to the Trump transition team, in part because their vetting process, their background checks process, substandard, it would appear. Only now have they agreed to work with DOJ to do some more traditional background checks going forward. But this here with Hegseth, if he were to withdraw, and there's a growing speculation that may happen, though he's making a last-ditch effort today to save for this, we should note, that Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has been reported as being a potential contender for this post. What's your take of this dynamic? That this might be a moment, though, much like the Gates-Bondi pick, where, yes, Trump might lose the telegenic first choice, but get someone who actually has similar credentials, even maybe more so, but more seriousness and a much easier path to confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the broader context here is kind of interesting, right? Which is that you have senators who are also making clear that they have no intention on being a rubber stamp on Donald Trump and his presidency, which is, I think, a good sign for the United States of America. Of course, that's in their own self-interest, but they don't just want to be, window dressing for the president, and they're kind of jockeying for their own power in Washington right now, and I think that's interesting. The other issue that you have is, much like with Matt Gaetz, Pete Hegseth, listen, I'm not going to stand in judgment of him as a human being. I've never met him. Lots of people have alcohol problems, have messy divorces. Fine. The problem is that American voters who voted for Donald Trump, many of them voted for an anti-establishment figure. They weren't necessarily rubber stamping, this kind of character flaw in the White House. And in the administration. So this isn't something that is easy to justify. I mean, I think this isn't a policy issue. This is a character one. And the more runway that Pete Hegseth has, the worse it looks. So every day that goes on, there's a new story. There's a new allegation. We haven't had, I don't know that we've seen the end of it. And frankly, if your mother, I mean, here's the thing, and Joe just said this a minute ago, and I have to agree. If what your mother is saying in an email is consistent with other allegations from other people, I think it's fair to say that more may come out. And you have to think that Donald Trump is concerned about that, and you don't know what's next. And also, when you do have, an alcohol problem, we all have people in our lives who have that. He may not even be aware of what is about to come.
Right.
So it's a concern.
And it was a concern, I think I saw reports out of the New York Times, it was a concern early on with the Trump transition team that since he did not reveal I think it was the 2017 rape allegation, because he did not reveal the police report even after that he had. There were two things that blindsided them. Yeah. I think it was the Times that reported. I'm sorry, it was the Wall Street Journal that reported that the Trump team was deeply concerned early on, because they said at that time, before all of this other stuff came out, well, if he didn't tell us the truth about that, then what else is out there? And now, Claire, you have Republican senators that are going to vote against him who are saying the same exact thing, which is, again, pay me now or pay me later, right? Yeah. Take it now or take it later. That they didn't know about all of these things. And the fear is that it's just going to keep getting worse. And you obviously, as a United States Senator, for several terms, you know what these hearings are going to look like. You're going to most likely have, these whistleblowers that talked about his drunkenness and his financial mismanagement and his getting up on stage in Louisiana with strippers and him having to drag it off there and all the things that you brought up. That on top of the California incident where the woman accused him of rape. You can expect people involved with that coming in. And again, as you know, as a prosecutor, there is a big difference between prosecutors saying or police saying, we're not going to be able to prove this beyond a reasonable shadow of doubt. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between that and somebody coming and testifying and talking about this is what happened. There's the courtroom and the high standard there, criminal standard. And then there's a standard that these senators are going to live by. And again, this keeps piling up. And Republican senators keep thinking it's just going to get worse.